Pre-qualifying is the most important aspect of the presentation. It's more important than rapport building because in a sense, it does build rapport. And then also it's, I think, even more important than explaining the difference between term and whole life. I mean, that kind of all comes together. But if you don't get the pre-qualifying part, and this is my point down, if you don't get pre-qualifying down, you're never really going to take advantage of that middle third of prospects that may or may not buy, depending on the circumstances and the variables in your presentation. It's important to figure out what makes the client think the way they do, why they did what they did, requesting the information, what is driving them to the point of wanting to actually spend their money on life insurance after decades, even half century plus since being born. What is about now at this moment that they want to buy life insurance? I think you should be intrigued and fascinated by that. And if not, at least fascinated, you should make it your absolute goal to figure out what that is, because that is where everything kind of hinges. That's the door hinge where our success or failure swings on, is knowing what motivated the prospect and revisiting that emotional feeling of what drove them to the point of inviting a salesperson into their home or on the phone. So let's kind of break down the pre-qualifying side, because there's different aspects to pre-qualifying. When we're pre-qualifying, you do not proceed in your sales presentation unless you have the 5 following aspects. Need. Do they need to have life insurance? Again, this is maybe something outside of the realm of final expense that is not the norm, but my personal experience is our prospects in the final expense world have to need the coverage. They have to be able to explain why they need it. And it's typically pretty obvious. Like if they die, it's, they don't have any money. They need it, right? So you got to have need. They've got to have the desire and urgency and to want to solve for that need. It's important that the client can emotionally express the consequences of what would happen if they don't have coverage and why that's a bad thing. We don't apply pressure to our clients, like make them feel bad. We simply, as we'll go through in a minute, ask a series of open-ended questions to facilitate what emotion is already kind of planted in their mind that they've already had before we've come there, right? We have to draw that out. And the more that we can draw that out, the more urgency the prospect's going to have to close and buy today. Okay, makes sense? Those are the 2 most important, as well as the hardest to get, that most of us skip over. Number 3 is the health. What is the health of the client? Can they medically qualify for something? The good news is that the client will always qualify for something unless they're older than 85 in GI or older than 90 and so most of the prospects we see will qualify medically for something. It's rare that health is a reason you can't do business. Then you've got 2 more questions. The bank account. What are we going to draw the money from? Is it going to be a bank, savings account, checking? What else we got? Debit cards. Can't do money orders anymore for the most part, but those are kind of our main ones right there. And last but not least, I must know what the budget is. And we'll cover all this, but Mrs. Prospect, if I can qualify for a program today, can you afford somewhere between $150 and $200 a month? Yes. Whoa. A red fox, I'm coming home. I like hearing $150, $200 a month. But you get the budget down and you know where you can close them at. You got the price, right? You don't have to worry about, oh, no, they can afford $50 or $75. They just gave you the budget, right? This is important to understand as a overarching rule of pre-qualifying. You only continue into the proceed or the remainder of the presentation if your client is qualified. They must be 100% qualified, because somebody who's 80% qualified is not qualified. It's like half pregnant. You can't be half pregnant. You either are pregnant or not. You either are qualified or not qualified. How are they going to pay without money? They could be on their hands and knees begging me for life insurance, but they ain't got 2 pennies to rub together. I can't do anything. I don't have a prospect. I have a suspect. I suspect they might be interested, but they ain't going to buy because they can't buy. So what my point is, one thing that new agents and experienced agents do commonly is they forget that you only proceed in pre-qualifying. You only proceed to the next phase of the presentation when you have all 5 of these elements completely sealed down, locked down tight. And if you don't, what do? You do this. Nice to meet you, Mr. Prospect. See you, I'm done. That's literally what you do. You do not waste another second with a prospect that is not qualified. Why? What's the point? I mean, you can sit around if you want to have fun and social hour, but we're not doing business now. We're doing something else, right? We're a professional visitor. I've done plenty of ride-alongs where the moment I figure out they don't have the need, I'm sitting there talking, standing up, shaking my hand, and I'm like Homer going through the bushes, right? Like I just get out of there and I leave my ride-along. He's like, what do I do? It's like, come on, let's go. We got to find a real prospect, right? So I don't want you wasting your time with people who aren't qualified. There's nothing more frustrating in this business, ladies and gentlemen, that will drive you insane than trying to sell someone who ain't qualified. You're going to find out you ain't getting anywhere, and it's going to drive you nuts, and they're not going to buy it anyway, right? So we use this objective process. And when I say objective, it's fact-based, it's process-based to tell ourselves when we have a high odds chance of selling somebody. And when we don't, it's imperative, I believe, to not waste any further of your time, because your time is ultimately valuable. You have this like special magical secret called selling insurance and being licensed. And there are people out there right now in your batch of leads that need your help. And every moment that you waste with an unqualified prospect trying to sell them or being nice to them because you don't want to be rude and get up and go or hang the phone up is less time to help someone who desperately needs it, that could have a major health change they can't qualify, or worse, buy from somebody else because you were too slow on the phone or in person with the other person, right? So I want you in front of people who are qualified. And the way we find out if they're qualified are those 5 major factors. I'll say it again: need, want, bank account, health, and budget. You must have all 5. And if you don't of any of those 5, you don't have a prospect. Might as well leave, okay? The most important question to ask is, what were your thoughts, concerns that prompted you to send back this card? Telling their why did they send and do what they did, right? We need to understand what their motive is, right? A lot of what we do as salespeople is kind of like being a lawyer, right? We need to understand and kind of reconstruct the moment in time and the circumstances around the event of requesting this information. I like to explain kind of what the motive is by thinking of a graph like this, right? You know, a graph with time on the bottom and the interest level at the top graph. And what happens is typically over time, there's no interest in life insurance, but something happens, an interest sparks, a loved one dies. And this kind of sets off a trend line like stocks, if you watch stock or Bitcoin or something. And then the interest level increases over time where it climaxes. And around that point is when they send back the card or request the information online. Okay. And what happens is that we have to go back to what originally motivated that person to even bother with sending back this card. Now, why is that important, or fill this form out online? Let me tell you why this is important. Number one, they've gotten these cards like their entire lives. Okay. It's not the first time they've ever seen it. They've repetitively and repeatedly, so we're gotten this card, and guess what they did? Toss it out. The vast majority of them just toss it out. They toss it out. They look at it, toss it out. Looks like a scam, toss it out. Or they're on Facebook and arguing about politics and waste time, and they scroll past the burial insurance ads. And then something happens around that time and they see it and they're interested. They're kind of confused. They don't know exactly what it is, but it sounds like something interesting, like life insurance. And maybe they need it. They argue with their spouse about it and they talk about it, and then they fill the card out, send it back, or fill it out online and go back to laughing at cat memes, right? So this is the life cycle of someone filling out information and sending it back, because they know deep down that probably has something to do with the salesperson. Nobody wants a salesperson in their home or talking on the phone, but they take that risk anyways because there's something there kind of just like bottled inside, a concern or fear that they need to have peace of mind. They need to be protected. Okay. And we need to revisit what that was. That's why we start by asking, what were your thoughts, concerns that prompted you to send this back in? In other words, why am I here? What caused you to be interested in the first place? Right? And then we sit back and listen to what had happened. However, many times when we ask this question, we don't get a good answer. We'll get an answer like, I ain't getting any younger. Well, I figured I'd send it back and See what it's about, right? We've done this long enough, gotten an answer like that. I think we all nod our heads, agree, right? So what do you say to that? Hey, that's fine, Mrs. Prospect. A lot of people do that, but why did you do this time? What has happened in your life that you're so concerned now about taking care of final expenses? So we don't let them off the hook, okay? Because again, this is true too of pre-qualifying and asking these disturbing questions. What's what we're doing? We're asking disturbing questions to start with. People will kind of shy away from it because they don't know who they're dealing with. They're kind of, talking about their feelings and all that stuff. And you're a stranger to an extent. Not everybody just spill their heart, but you can't take the lead, or you can't take your foot off the pedal and kind of navigate around that and ask another question. You got to stay on that and get the answer to that question. Why? Because knowing why they did what they did is everything. It will tell you what their hot button issues are. It will tell you what they're concerned about. It'll tell you what they're looking for to solve their pain points and their concerns, right? So then from there, there's a series of other questions that we'll ask. And in the need and wants phase, the purpose of asking these questions is to arouse interest and urgency to solve this problem today. All of our clients are what, ladies and gentlemen? What do we categorize our final expense prospects as? What's my funny phrase, turn of the phrase? World-class procrastinators. Is that you cannot take for granted asking these questions to get to the heart of the matter, to drive their urgency, because this is why I go to the depth that we do with the questions that we have. Because if we don't get their motive, if we don't help them see, another phrase I like to describe what we're doing, the hearse backed up against the front porch. I can always wait till tomorrow, because that's their general disposition. Okay. And again, it's safe. It's a better strategy to go into battle with this kind of bias. Our clients are just going to put off what they can as much as they can. So we need to prepare our strategy to overcome this kind of resistance, this friction that they all have. So we ask a series of questions to overcome that. So I like to say, what's your existing life insurance? Who do you have your existing life insurance with? Oh, I don't have it. What do you say then? I say, oh, wow, really? Huh. So God forbid, if you died tomorrow, Mrs. Prospect, what happens? So there's a whole point in the script, you'll see it, guys, where we really want to emphasize the awkwardness of dying without coverage. Because a lot of our clients, about half, won't have coverage. And we really want to put salt on the wound. We want to kind of sound a little surprised. Really, you don't. What would happen with dying? What would happen if you died without coverage? How would your family handle it? We want to go there, again, going deeper into the presentation to feel the emotion and the pain. Because again, why do people mostly buy life insurance? Because they want their family to have peace. They want to have peace of mind, so their family is not financially burdened. Okay, so we need to walk them through visually what is actually going to happen if they die without it, right? We can't just assume they know. They may think a little bit about it, but it's so painful they just stay away from it. That's avoiding the problem. We need to face the problem head on, and it's your job. It's your job as the agent to guide the agent or the prospect to face that pain, because it's not going away. Death's inevitable, right? But the consequences of not being prepared are not. You can prepare in advance and relieve this, right? So it's your job to face them towards it. It's disturbing, it's uncomfortable, but I don't care. It's just what it takes sometimes. So we ask a series of these questions to get the client in a state of desire, urgency, pain, and to also facilitate the need, okay?